Imagine walking into a forest where even the birds suddenly stop singing, where your compass spins without reason, where people swear they have seen creatures that shouldn't exist, and where, for centuries, no one has been able to explain what truly hides in the darkness. There is a place in America where ghost stories, UFO sightings, monstrous creatures, mysterious lights, and unexplained disappearances all seem to exist within the same stretch of land. Most haunted places are known for one type of mystery. This place is different. Here, every nightmare seems to come alive. For more than 300 years, thousands of witnesses have claimed they saw something impossible. Some returned terrified. Others refused to speak about what happened, and a few investigators left with more questions than answers. Scientists believe there are logical explanations. Paranormal researchers believe the truth is far darker. So, what is really hiding inside these forests? Tonight, we're entering one of America's strangest and most controversial paranormal locations, the Bridgewater Triangle. Before you decide what to believe, listen to every story, because by the end of this video, you may never look at a quiet forest the same way again. Part 1. The triangle that shouldn't exist. Unlike the famous Bermuda Triangle, the Bridgewater Triangle isn't hidden beneath the ocean. It lies in southeastern Massachusetts, covering nearly 200 square miles of forests, rivers, swamps, abandoned roads, and small towns. On the surface, it looks peaceful. Families live nearby. Children play in the neighborhoods. Tourists drive through without realizing that they're passing one of America's most mysterious regions. But according to local legends, appearances can be dangerously deceptive. The term Bridgewater Triangle became widely known during the 1970s, when researcher Loren Coleman began collecting reports of strange events happening throughout the area. At first, he believed the stories were unrelated. One witness claimed to see strange lights floating over the Hockomock swamp. Another described a massive creature running across an empty road. Police officers reported investigating incidents they couldn't explain. Hunters spoke of hearing footsteps behind them while finding no one there. As more reports arrived, a disturbing pattern began to emerge. The same locations, the same terrifying experiences, again and again. Soon, investigators realized these weren't isolated ghost stories. Almost every kind of unexplained phenomenon seemed to occur inside the triangle. Ghost sightings, UFO encounters, Bigfoot-like creatures, phantom animals, mysterious disappearances. Even reports of giant snakes and enormous birds, unlike anything officially recorded in the region. It sounded impossible. Yet the stories kept coming. At the very center of many of these reports lies one place that locals have feared for centuries, Hockomock Swamp. Its name comes from an Algonquian word often translated as the place where spirits dwell. Long before European settlers arrived, Native American tribes respected this swamp. They hunted near it, but avoided entering its deepest areas without reason. According to local traditions, they believed powerful spiritual forces lived within its endless wetlands. Some elders warned that disturbing the land could awaken something that should never be disturbed. Whether those stories were spiritual beliefs or ancient warnings, no one knows for certain. As settlers expanded into the region during the 1600s, they began hearing strange stories of their own. Travelers reported seeing glowing lights drifting silently between the trees late at night. Farmers claimed their livestock became unusually frightened whenever they wandered too close to the swamp. Hunters occasionally returned home shaken, insisting they had been watched by unseen eyes throughout their journey. Most people laughed at these stories, until they started hearing similar accounts from different witnesses. Decades passed, then centuries. Instead of fading away, the legends grew stronger. By the 20th century, newspapers, local historians, police reports, and paranormal investigators had documented hundreds of unusual incidents connected to the triangle. While many could be explained individually, others remained deeply puzzling. Some skeptics argued that fear, folklore, and coincidence created the legend. Others asked a simple question. How could so many people, separated by decades, backgrounds, and professions, describe such remarkably similar experiences? That question remains unanswered today. And this is only the beginning. Part 2. The Ancient Curse. The deeper you explore the history of the Bridgewater Triangle, the more unsettling it becomes. Many people believe the mystery did not begin with ghosts, UFOs, or strange creatures. They believe it began hundreds of years ago, with bloodshed, betrayal, and a land that never forgot what happened. At the heart of the triangle lies Hockomock Swamp, a vast wilderness of thick forests, dark waters, and hidden marshes. Even during daylight, parts of the swamp remain unusually quiet. Sunlight struggles to reach the ground, and the winding paths often look identical, making it frighteningly easy to lose your way. Long before European settlers arrived, this land belonged to the Wampanoag people. To them, the swamp was more than just another hunting ground. It was a sacred place, one that demanded respect. Some tribal elders believed powerful spirits lived within its depths. They warned young hunters never to enter carelessly and never to mock the unseen forces that guarded the land. These stories were passed from one generation to the next. No one knows whether they were meant as spiritual teachings, cautionary tales, or memories of real events. But one thing is certain. The swamp had already earned a mysterious reputation centuries before the modern paranormal legends began. Then history took a tragic turn. In 1675, one of the deadliest conflicts in early American history erupted, King Philip's War. The war devastated both Native American tribes and English settlers, leaving thousands dead. Hockomock Swamp became one of the final refuges for Native warriors and their families as they tried to escape advancing colonial forces. Battles were fought among the trees. Villages were destroyed. Countless lives were lost. According to local folklore, the cries of those who died never truly faded. Some residents later claimed that on certain nights, faint echoes of distant voices, drums, or footsteps could still be heard deep within the swamp, even though no one was there. Of course, there is no scientific evidence that these sounds are supernatural. Wind, wildlife, and the unique acoustics of wetlands can produce eerie noises. Yet the stories persisted, growing stronger with every generation. As the years passed, settlers began reporting strange experiences of their own. Travelers claimed they felt an overwhelming sense of dread the moment they entered the swamp. Some said they suddenly became disoriented, even on familiar paths. Others insisted they heard whispers just beyond the trees, voices that disappeared the instant they tried to follow them. A few described seeing dark figures standing silently between the trunks, only for the shapes to vanish when approached. Many dismissed these reports as fear playing tricks on the mind. But then something stranger happened. Different witnesses, who had never met each other, began describing remarkably similar experiences. Some spoke of an invisible presence following them through the forest. Others claimed they felt as though they were being watched from every direction at once. Even experienced hunters, people who had spent their lives in the wilderness, occasionally admitted that Hockomock Swamp felt unlike any other place they had ever entered. One local legend tells of a hunter who ventured into the swamp before sunrise, confident he knew every trail. Hours later, he stumbled back into town, exhausted and terrified. He claimed that no matter which direction he walked, the same twisted tree kept appearing in front of him, as if the forest itself refused to let him leave. No one could verify his story. Yet similar tales of people becoming hopelessly lost in familiar areas have been shared for decades. Was it simply the confusing landscape of the swamp? Or was there something else at work? To believers, these stories are signs that the land itself holds a dark memory, one shaped by centuries of tragedy and loss. To skeptics, they are examples of how isolation, fear, and dense wilderness can affect the human mind. But whether you believe in curses or coincidences, one fact remains impossible to ignore. The ancient legends surrounding Hockomock Swamp laid the foundation for everything that would come next, because as the 20th century approached, the reports changed. People no longer spoke only of strange feelings or ghostly whispers. Now, they claimed they were seeing creatures that should not exist. Part 3. Creatures of the Darkness. As the years passed, the stories surrounding the Bridgewater Triangle became even more disturbing. People were no longer reporting strange sounds or an uneasy feeling in the woods. Now, they claimed they were seeing living creatures, not ordinary wildlife, not bears, not deer, but beings that seemed completely out of place, creatures that, according to science, should not have existed in southeastern Massachusetts at all. At first, these accounts were dismissed as exaggerations. A frightened hiker might mistake a shadow for an animal. A driver on a dark road could easily misidentify something crossing in front of the headlights, but then the reports kept coming. Different witnesses. Different decades. The same descriptions. One of the most famous legends involves a Bigfoot-like creature. Witnesses described a massive, human-shaped figure standing between 7 and 9 feet tall, covered in dark hair from head to toe. They said its shoulders were unnaturally broad, its arms hung unusually low, and its glowing eyes reflected in the darkness before it silently disappeared into the trees. Unlike the loud monsters of Hollywood movies, this creature rarely made a sound. It simply watched. Several campers later claimed they heard heavy footsteps circling their campsites throughout the night. Whenever they pointed a flashlight toward the noise, there was nothing there. But moments after the light moved away, the footsteps returned. Some were too frightened to sleep until sunrise. Others packed their belongings and left immediately. Yet Bigfoot was only the beginning. Another terrifying legend speaks of an enormous thunderbird, a giant bird said to have a wingspan so wide that it briefly blocked out the sunlight as it flew overhead. Several witnesses claimed they saw a dark shape soaring above the forests before disappearing beyond the treetops. A few even described hearing powerful wing beats echoing through the air, despite seeing no ordinary bird nearby. Skeptics suggested that large hawks, eagles, or even optical illusions could explain these sightings. Believers disagreed. They argued that experienced hunters and lifelong residents knew the difference between a normal bird and something far larger. Then came one of the triangle's strangest legends, the phantom snakes. Although Massachusetts is not home to giant serpents, multiple witnesses reported seeing enormous snake-like creatures moving through rivers, marshes, and wetlands. Some estimated the creatures to be more than 20 feet long. Others claimed they watched massive coils disappear beneath the water without leaving a ripple. No photographs, no physical evidence, only stories. Yet those stories continued for decades. Perhaps the most unsettling reports involve what investigators call phantom animals. People described seeing black wolves, large cats, or dog-like creatures standing perfectly still beside lonely roads. Drivers slowed down. The animals stared directly at them, then vanished without making a sound. No footprints, no broken branches, nothing. One retired police officer reportedly admitted that during a nighttime patrol, he briefly saw what appeared to be an unusually large black animal standing in the middle of an empty road. Before he could step out of his vehicle, it simply disappeared into the darkness. He never found a trace of it. As reports multiplied, paranormal investigators began searching for patterns. They noticed something unusual. Many encounters occurred near the same forests, the same swamps, the same isolated roads, almost as if the creatures were connected to specific locations within the triangle. But were they real? Wildlife experts believe many sightings can be explained by misidentified animals, poor visibility, stress, or the human brain trying to make sense of incomplete information in darkness. That explanation satisfies many people, but not everyone, because some witnesses insisted they encountered these creatures in broad daylight. Others described details so specific, and so similar, that investigators struggled to dismiss every account as simple imagination. Even today, hikers occasionally claim they hear heavy footsteps following them through remote trails, only to discover that no one is behind them. Some leave without looking back. Others never return to those woods again. Whether these stories are misunderstood, wildlife encounters, powerful folklore, or something science has yet to explain, remains one of the Bridgewater Triangle's greatest mysteries. And just when people believed these creatures were the strangest part of the legend, the sky itself began to reveal impossible sights, bright lights, silent objects, and encounters that seemed to come from somewhere beyond our world. Part 4. Ghosts, UFOs, and Vanishing People. By the late 20th century, the Bridgewater Triangle had already become famous for its legends of strange creatures. But just when people thought they understood the mystery, an entirely new wave of reports began to emerge. This time, the fear wasn't coming from the forests alone. It was coming from the sky. Residents across southeastern Massachusetts started reporting strange lights appearing over the triangle. Unlike ordinary aircraft, these lights often moved in complete silence. Witnesses claimed they would hover motionless for several minutes, then accelerate in impossible directions before disappearing into the night. Some described bright white spheres. Others reported glowing orange or blue lights drifting slowly above Hockomock Swamp, reflecting across the dark water before suddenly vanishing. For decades, these sightings became one of the most frequently reported mysteries in the region. Of course, many investigators believe there are perfectly ordinary explanations. Atmospheric conditions, distant aircraft, satellites, drones, or even optical illusions can sometimes create unusual visual effects. But not every witness accepted those explanations. Some insisted the objects behaved unlike anything they had ever seen. One local family claimed that while driving home late at night, they noticed a brilliant light floating silently above a nearby field. At first, they assumed it was a helicopter. Then it stopped, without making a sound. Seconds later, it shot straight upward and disappeared into the darkness. The family never found an explanation. As UFO stories spread, another set of reports became even more disturbing: ghost sightings. Visitors exploring old cemeteries and abandoned roads claimed they occasionally saw shadowy figures standing between the trees. Some reported the appearance of a woman dressed in white, walking slowly along isolated paths before fading into the darkness. Others described hearing footsteps behind them, only to turn around and find the trail completely empty. A few even claimed they heard voices whispering their names. Naturally, there is no scientific evidence proving these experiences were paranormal. Human perception can be affected by darkness, stress, expectation, and the unfamiliar sounds of nature. Yet many witnesses remained convinced they had encountered something they could not explain. Perhaps the most unsettling stories involve people who briefly seem to disappear. Several hikers have reported becoming separated from friends for only a few minutes, despite walking on the same trail. In some cases, those who became lost later claimed they had no memory of how they wandered so far from the group. Others believed only a short time had passed, but when they returned, hours had gone by. Search and rescue teams have explained that dense forests, repeating scenery, and panic can easily cause experienced hikers to lose their sense of direction. In wilderness environments, even small navigation mistakes can quickly become dangerous. Still, stories of missing time and unexplained disorientation continue to fuel the triangle's reputation. Even local police occasionally found themselves investigating reports that led nowhere. Calls would come in about mysterious lights over the swamp, strange figures crossing lonely roads, unidentified animals frightening motorists. Officers would arrive within minutes, only to find empty roads, silent forests, and absolutely no evidence that anything had ever happened. Former investigators have acknowledged that while many reports likely had ordinary explanations, others simply remained unresolved because there wasn't enough evidence to determine what witnesses actually experienced. Perhaps that uncertainty is what keeps the legend alive, because every unanswered report leaves room for another question, and every question creates another story. Today, paranormal investigators continue to visit the Bridgewater Triangle carrying night vision cameras, audio recorders, drones, and environmental sensors. Some leave believing they captured unusual sounds or unexplained lights. Others leave with nothing at all. The mystery refuses to produce clear answers. And perhaps that's exactly why it has survived for centuries. Because the Bridgewater Triangle doesn't ask you to believe. It simply presents the stories and leaves you to decide what they mean. But after hundreds of years of eyewitness accounts, local legends, unexplained encounters, and unanswered investigations, only one question remains. Is the Bridgewater Triangle truly haunted, or is it simply one of the greatest legends America has ever created? So, what do you believe? Was the Bridgewater Triangle nothing more than centuries of myths and coincidences? Or is there truly something hidden within those ancient forests that no one has been able to explain? The mystery is far from over. This story doesn't end here. The journey continues in the upcoming chapters. Part 6. The most terrifying eyewitness accounts real stories from people who claim they experienced the impossible. Part 7. Inside the investigations, paranormal investigators, police reports, and the evidence that still sparks debate. Part 8. Science versus the supernatural. Can psychology, nature, and science explain the Bridgewater Triangle, or is something still missing? Part 9. Secrets hidden beneath the swamp, forgotten legends, unexplored locations, and mysteries buried deep within Hockomock Swamp. Part 10. The mystery lives on, the latest sightings, modern investigations, and the unanswered questions that continue to haunt the Bridgewater Triangle. If you don't want to miss these upcoming chapters, subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and join us as we uncover more true mysteries, unsolved cases, and paranormal stories from around the world. Because sometimes the scariest stories aren't the ones we imagine. They're the ones no one has ever been able to explain. Until the next mystery, stay curious and never stop questioning the unknown.